Shalom everyone, this is Chris Shoemaker, also known as Yehuda ben Shomer, and welcome to the Daily Drosh. Today's Daily Drosh is taken from Deuteronomy chapter 12, and I'm going to be starting with verse 1 in the Jerusalem Bible. It says, "Now these are the laws and customs that you are to keep and observe in the land. In the land that Adonai your God, the God of your fathers, has granted you to possess, for as long as you live in that land." If any of you have been listening to me for any length of time, you have heard me say that there are 613 commandments in the Torah, in the law of Moses. And I believe that the law of Moses is still applicable for believers in Messiah Yeshua today. But I don't believe that all 613 apply to one person, or all 613 can be followed today. And I'm just going to give you one example of that. If you go down to verse 2, it says, "You must destroy completely all the places where the nations you dispossessed have served their gods." So it goes on to talk about destroying the Asherah poles. They were sort of like totem poles. They were phallic symbols, is basically what they were. To tear down the pagan altars, and to tear down the temples, and to tear down any and every sign of paganism in the land of Canaan, which Israel was to possess. So a lot of people will make the argument that, well, if you keep the Torah, if you're Torah observant and keep the law of Moses, then how come you're not tearing down, pagan places here in the United States or Canada? How come you're not going and tearing down Masonic lodges and mosques and Buddhist temples and tearing down statues because they're idols? Well, even though we're Torah observant, we don't live in the land of Israel. We don't live in the Canaan land, in the land of promise. We are in exile outside of the land of Canaan. We are living in, Europe or America or Canada or wherever, any place besides Israel. Therefore, this particular commandment does not apply to us. It doesn't apply to us because we do not live in the land. Capital T, the, capital L, land. It says, "Now these are the laws and customs that you must keep and observe in the land, Canaan, the promised land, Israel, that Adonai your God, the God of your fathers, has granted you to possess for as long as you live in that land." And as I said, it goes on to tear down the statues, the temples and the altars of the pagan nations, of the gods of Baal and Molech and Ashtar and all these others, Chemosh, Dagon, etc., etc. So because we live in exile, we live in a land that's a melting pot of other peoples, places, and nations, and therefore there is religious freedom. So we have no reason nor any right to tear down any religious buildings or symbols, that are placed here in our land of exile. So this is just but one example in how people take the scriptures out of context and how people make very asinine assumptions. Well, if you keep the law of Moses, how come you're not burning witches? Because we're not living in Israel, and these witches are not Israelites, and these witches aren't Jews or Hebrews. Therefore, they have a right to be a witch. And because we don't live in Israel and they're not practicing witchcraft in Israel, we don't have a right to, impose the death sentence on them. So it's so funny. Like, use your brain, use the brain that God gave you as you're reading the scriptures, and put the scriptures and the commandments of the scriptures in context. There's some commandments we cannot fulfill because we do not live in the land of Israel, because the temple is not standing, because there's not a working and operating priesthood. There's some commandments that I can't fulfill because I'm not a woman, and some that my wife can't fulfill because she's not a man. So let's just keep these things in mind as you begin to study the first 5 books of Moses for yourself and start learning about God's commandments and his instructions for a good and healthy life, physically, mentally, and spiritually. Hey guys, thanks for listening. Go out there and have a great day. Shalom and Shavua Tov. Come to AbrahamsDescendants.com and check out our kosher comic section called Inside the Bushel and its archives. You'll be glad you did.